You probably see this stuff out there, this stuff on social media, and like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm not like that. That is not me. Do you know what? Great. That's good news. Just think about a friend. Any friend you've ever made, this is the process that you went through. First of all, you didn't know them. Then somehow you got their attention or they got yours. You noticed each other. Then as you had more conversations, you got to know them. And over time, start to like each other. And then eventually we reach the level of trust. You've got a real friend. And bear in mind, of course, sometimes this can happen very, very quickly, depending on the person, depending on the chemistry. But even when it happens almost in an instant, it still has to go through this process. At the start, you're gaining attention. For somebody to be able to know you, you have to get their attention. But the more they get to know you, it starts to become about building a connection. It's going to be much easier to get their attention if they already like you. So what you do becomes much more about connecting with them, creating a deeper connection with them. So this is why we release singles, because they're easier to get attention than an album. This is massively oversimplified, but in a sense, singles are more about gaining attention, whereas albums are more about creating a connection with an existing fan base. So you say, Mike, surely that means that focusing on making and releasing singles first is correct. Most people just assume if you say focus on releasing singles first, what they assume that means is I'm going to focus on making singles first and then releasing them, and over time building my fan base with those singles. But if you're making singles, they're likely to be infrequent. You're making a lot less music. I mean, one of the things about albums is you make a lot more music in less time. You release a single, you get the attention, but then that attention is drawn away to the rest of the world, everything on the internet, all the social stuff, and they forget. You've only really got to notice, and then it just goes around back to don't know if you're releasing infrequent singles. Unless, of course, it becomes a massive hit and you get like signed to a huge label and then they start promoting you all kinds of different ways. But that's a special case and it's like winning the lottery. So let's not assume that that's going to happen. If you are, as an independent artist, releasing one single every 6 months or even probably every 3 months, it will be highly unlikely that people are going to remember you. Just think about how much stuff is coming people's way. So here's a solution. You make an album and then you release it as singles. I mean, you don't have to release the whole album as singles necessarily. You could. But then you have this situation, all right? So you release song 1, you get their attention, and then the attention goes back to the rest of the world. But then, quick on its heels, you release song 2. Now, because if they liked it, the people will still remember who you are, essentially, more and more people will be ascending up to this trust. And then you release the album. And as you can see, this is dependent on having the music ready. Also, the music being of a consistent style, it being you, it being even part of the same project. There is also here a possibility of in your first single saying that there is something else coming or that this is the start of a story. So you're actually drawing people in over time. After you've released the whole album, when you have somebody new, it's like, oh, who's this new artist I've never heard of before? Okay, I'm going to go and check out their Spotify. Oh, they've got an album. Great. I'll listen to that. Like, oh, I like this. What else have they done? So you've actually got the ready-made situation for somebody who likes that single to build that musical trust. So actually making an album and releasing it as singles and then releasing it as an album fulfills what we need from singles, but also we get the positive benefits of making an album for us as artists, the progress and the amount of music and the fun of it. I mean, you know, we're artists, we make albums, right? Writers write novels, painters make paintings, musicians make albums. Not only do we have that, but also we have a way of building an audience. I'm not here saying this is great and I'm really happy about it. There's this whole thing happening now called the creator economy, and everyone's a creator. It's what I've been doing for years and years and years. In order for you to build an audience, just doing it through music alone is becoming more and more difficult, simply because of the amount of stuff that's going on. So around each song that you release, each track that you release, each single that you release, that's why people are creating content, the dreaded C word, content, for an artist, a music artist, or in the more modern way of looking at it, a creator whose focus is music. Then the songs are the tentpole thing, and then you have the opportunity to create other things around it, because each of these things also draw people towards trust, to a greater connection. I'm sorry if this is depressing, because I just want to focus on music. What can I say? This is the game. This is the good news, right? Because you probably see this stuff on social media and oh God, I don't want to do that. But it's doing really well. There's so many likes. Oh, I can't do that. I'm not like that. That is not me. Do you know what? Great. That's good news. Why? Because when we focus on what we want to make, what other content we want to make, what type of video or what type of emails we want to write, or what type of podcast we want to make, or what blog post we want to write, whatever it might be. It's a Venn diagram. I wore my Venn diagram t-shirt on purpose for this one. What you can / want to do. Now, it's been my experience that if you are a solo artist, can and want are very similar. Because if you try and consistently create stuff and you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it over the long term. It's just not possible. So it's absolutely essential that you figure out what you want to do, because that's what you can do. The second consideration is what enhances or what works for your music and your music business. The stuff that you make around the music, it's an extension of the art. It's not you being inauthentic and icky and doing things you don't want to do. If I was extending the art into other media, what would that look like? Because that's what is going to work for your music. And it's also going to work for your business. Because the third consideration, which is the one that gets people tripped up often, is what attracts, and the important word here is your fans. I'm going to put that in capitals. Not what attracts Sabrina Carpenter's fans, or what attracts Aphex Twins fans, or what attracts Paul McCartney's fans. What attracts your fans? Where those three intersect, that is what you want to make. Now, what's important to understand at this stage, you're actually not going to know what attracts your fans. Why? Because if you're just starting out, you don't have any. Okay. So you don't know who they are. So what we can do at this stage is just not worry about that. Isn't that a relief? We don't need to concern ourselves too much about what's going to attract our people, because we don't know who they are. So what we do is we start here. And we bring this into it as well. So what is going to enhance my music? How can I make this extension of my art? And we focus there, and that's what we start making. And that's what we start putting out into the world. And that is how we figure out over time, through consistent releasing of stuff, what attracts your fans. Because at the end of the day, what people want in the modern environment, on social and everything else, is something that is different. They want something that speaks to them. They want something that is real and authentic. I know authentic is a massively overused word, but particularly now. They don't necessarily want something that is overproduced. They don't necessarily want something that is exactly the same as the trend that is going on right now, because there's already loads of that stuff. It's very similar to the unique style stuff that I focus on in the music coaching that I do. You want to create music, video, emails, images, podcasts, whatever you do. You want to create it for you first as an artist. Okay, you want to create stuff that you want to make.